To have you here as always. I just wanted you to hear something here. Alan Dershowitz yesterday was on ABC This Week with George Stephanopoulos and Dan Abrams, and he talked about the Mueller investigation and what he thinks is inside the Mueller report. We'd like to get your response to it.
I think the report is going to be devastating to the president, and I know that the president's team is already working on a response to the report. And so at some point, when the report's made public, and that's a very hard question considering the new Attorney General, who has the authority to decide when and under what circumstance to make it public, it will be made public probably with a response alongside. The president will say, look, it's political. There's their account and there's our account, and then the American public will have to judge the credibility.
For you to say it's devastating is really something.
All right, so he said it's devastating. How does he know what's in the report?
He doesn't know. He's trying to re-ingratiate himself with people up on the Cape so he can have lunch again up there. This is ridiculous. This is Alan Dershowitz trying to be the center of attention. I think it's goofy, uninformative, unhelpful. I mean, I could say it's going to be a beautiful report. It's going to have colors, and there are going to be pages with photographs of people being framed by Bob Mueller and others. I mean, it's an idiotic statement. Of course it's going to have some political consequence because we know that Mueller is the Antichrist. And so as a result of his fight with the President of the United States over no crime, he's going to have to justify his existence. So I assume he's going to say some things that are not going to be particularly attractive, but he's not going to charge the President with a crime because he can't, number one, under the Constitution, and number two, because there's no evidence that the President personally did anything. The Mueller investigation is a joke, has been a joke, should be over. And, whatever is going to be released will be decided by the Department of Justice. Or it could, whatever is published could very well be leaked by Andrew Weissman because he's an absolute thug and he works for Mueller. So who knows? I mean, these are all Dems running the Mueller investigation. It could be leaked without the permission of the department.
Right, and when you say the permission of the department, that includes Matt Whitaker, right? The new acting director, or the acting attorney general. He would have to make a decision like this, right?
Yes, because Rosenstein has been removed from supervising the Mueller investigation. He should have been removed by Jeff Sessions a long time ago for a conflict of interest over his role in the firing of Comey, but for some reasons Sessions couldn't figure out what time or what day of the week it was.
Have you been, I want to ask you, just like in retrospect, before we get to the release of the Mueller investigation, have you been pretty satisfied with the president's strategy with how to grapple with the existence of Bob Mueller in public? Did he not go far enough? Should he have ended the Mueller investigation, or do you think that it's just been good that the president keeps reminding the American people that he's being unfairly targeted?
Oh, I think the latter. I mean, the president has handled this beautifully. I think the criticism of Mueller was warranted. I think firing him would have been a political mistake. He didn't need to do that. He had his own constitutional protections. I think the existence of the Mueller probe has actually helped the president through a process. I think the American people have concluded quite properly that the president has been treated unfairly since the beginning of this. I think they already accept the notion that there was a brazen plot to exonerate Hillary Clinton in 2016 and ultimately to frame Donald Trump with a crime he didn't commit. The American people already accept that, and they already accept that the Mueller probe is political, unjustified, and should end. So the president's doing it perfectly. He'll have his opportunity to fight back when anything becomes public. By the way, I'm not sure, even if Congress decides they want to subpoena the report, it has grand jury information. They're under no obligation to release that report to anybody.
Well, I just want to point out, because you brought it up too, that there's a new book out from Corey Lewandowski and David Bossie, who worked for the president's election campaign. They interviewed the president about the existence of the Mueller investigation. The president said what you said, Joe. He said, quote, "I think it makes my base stronger. I would have never said this to you, but I think the level of love now is far greater than when we won." I don't know. What do you think, Mike? Turning to the vice president, and the vice president says, as strong or stronger. The Mueller investigation in the end has helped the president, he says.
Well, I think in some ways it has. I think it has been, however, a stone around his neck in foreign relations. There's no doubt that foreign leaders ask about the investigation and how it's going. The president himself views that as a drag on his presidency. But I must say, no matter what the drag on his presidency has been, he's been amazingly successful in domestic and foreign policy. And I think over the long run, history will, again, it will be shown that this was part of a plot and that Mueller played his role beautifully with the assistance of Rod Rosenstein, who is the single most fundamentally dishonest lawyer in America and public official. Rod Rosenstein, I hope, will be fired in a reasonable period of time. He deserves the guillotine.
Wow. Comey and Lynch, we now have dates for their appearance before Congress. We know that James Comey wants to make this a public appearance, obviously, so he can grandstand. Can they run the clock out until January so that they can avoid having to do this altogether?
Of course they can. Both Lynch and Comey can run the clock out. They can refuse to appear. They can force a lawsuit. They can move to quash the subpoenas. This is an embarrassment by Gowdy and Goodlatte to stand up and pound their chest on television claiming they're going to get to the bottom of this. Both of them are an embarrassment to the concept of oversight. To issue a subpoena at this 11th hour, it's 11:59, by the way. It's not just the 11th hour. I mean, this is an embarrassment to all Republicans who believe in legitimate oversight. Trey Gowdy punted on Benghazi, took a dive. Goodlatte, all of a sudden, he's Mr. Tough Guy. He's Harvey Milquetoast, for heaven's sakes. These people have done severe damage to the concept of oversight, and I can assure you, when Elijah Cummings and Jerry Nadler take over, they won't be as stupid as Goodlatte and Gowdy have been. I mean, this is as bad as it gets for Republicans. Just watching Gowdy on television, I want to slap him across the face.
Joe, if they actually succeed in getting James Comey to actually show up to Congress on December 3rd, should they have that in public or behind closed doors? What would be more productive?
It should be behind closed doors, because that's the only way to have effective questioning. Of course Comey doesn't want it behind closed doors, because he gets 30 minutes from good questioners like John Ratliff from Texas and others. I mean, this is exactly what he doesn't want. He doesn't want Jordan to be able to question him for 30 minutes at a pop. So a public hearing is a joke. Republicans don't know how to manage public hearings. Democrats are good at breaking them up. Like, you know, they're like the clowns crossing the border in San Ysidro. That's what the Democrats are. They're border crossers in the garb of congressmen and congresswomen. No, this should be behind closed doors. So if it's in public, Comey can say, "Oh, that's classified. I can't talk about it." First of all, they're never going to get him there because they waited too long. And this is all a show by Gowdy and Goodlatte, two of the most ineffective, feckless, stupid overseers in the history of the Congress.
All right, Joe, well, when we have you on next time, we're going to find out how you really feel about them.
Yeah. Of course.
Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Hope you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. We'll talk to you next week.
And I was thinking about that as I was watching this unfolding. Trump going into these next, 2 years before 2020, he cannot do all of this on his own. He tried to do it in the midterm, rush at the end of the election cycle with all these rallies, and he did a good job, but Republicans lost like 40 seats, which, again, is not unusual, but it's not great, not good. And we won these, Texas and Florida and Georgia, races just by the skin of our teeth. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, we need more people who are going to have the guts and the strength to stand up against the media, Hollywood, the establishment GOP, who do not want to give him this wall and didn't from the very beginning. We need more candidates who stand up for the American people, our sovereignty, our right to determine who comes into our country and who does not come into our country. Donald Trump cannot do it all on his own. We have all these bozos who were saying, oh, it's not a crisis. How about Obama? It's not a crisis. What are these people doing out here? It's not a crisis. Oh, put away the phony accent, okay? Mr. Hawaii. See, Hawaii doesn't have to worry about borders, okay? They're surrounded by water on all sides. But this was all a setup. The media had to say it wasn't a crisis. The Democrats had to say it wasn't a crisis in the very beginning. Okay, because to say it was a crisis means that Donald Trump was right. They would rather endanger America than say that Donald Trump was right. We got to do something about it. Even though Hillary over the weekend on Friday admitted that the migration situation in Europe is not tenable or sustainable. Oh, so finally, thanks, Hillary. You admit, and we'll get to the actual quotes, and I'll be handed them any minute, but Hillary was admitting essentially that Donald Trump was right about Europe with his migration, giving a big speech. Of course. The Guardian had to write the piece about it. Well, of course. Look at Europe. Look at what they're dealing with. Crime where they never had crime. Cultural clashes where they didn't have, at least it's such a fever pitch as they have today. But the United States is supposed to be this big experiment in open borders to make everyone feel less guilty. As a country, we should not feel guilty in the slightest for standing our ground on this situation.
This war on the border is real. And what people are trying to do is a psychological war, very often guided, by the way, by American leftists who are activists and American left-wing organizations who are helping finance it. And their goal is to find some way to embarrass the U.S. government so we can't even control our own border. And we have to be prepared to stand up to that and to do whatever is necessary.
Whatever is necessary. How many of you think that the administration is getting the support it needs from Republicans in Congress? You know, Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell, they should be hitting the ground running today on this issue at the border. We're worried about Syria and Afghanistan and what the Russians are doing to the Ukrainians. We have a problem right on our southern border, my friends. Right now, it's a health crisis. You bet it's a humanitarian crisis. It's an economic crisis for this country. It's a national security crisis. And we have to be browbeat by these liberal do-gooder types who are going to say, oh, we have to have the open borders. We have to let everybody in. They need to apply here. Look, these are just people wanting a better life. As they violate our laws, rush past the borders, knock down fences, endanger the lives of Border Patrol. And then they cry when, well, we have to defend our border. We have to drop tear gas. And drop, and there'll be water cannons or something soon. Well, the children are getting, yeah, because you're putting your children in harm's way. That's not our fault. You decided to put your children in harm's way. That was your choice. That was not our choice. We are trying to do what we can to help people in their home countries. But it is not the responsibility of the American taxpayer to foot the bill for all of Central America. I'm sorry, it is not. And no amount of liberal browbeating or Saturday Night Live skits or that crap they do, is going to change my mind. And I don't care what anybody says. We have a right to defend our border, and no one should be able to walk across our border. Not one person. Not one. Until these people who are screaming for open borders put their kids in the same schools that are being crushed by indigent folks flooding the public schools in South California, Southern California, and Arizona, and New Mexico, and Texas, and in parts of Florida, until they send their kids to those schools, then I'll start listening to them.
As unfortunate as this incident is, I'm not sure that it proves that we need a border wall. In fact, it's the opposite. The border worked. Border security here worked. So however many people rushed the border, 39 were arrested. They are going to be deported. No one breached the border. So shutting down the border worked, and it also proves that we don't need a border wall, because the migrants went out of their way to go to the Tijuana entrance because the rest of the border was considered too hazardous, too
is
dangerous
this?
to cross. So they went and
We don't need to hear a soliloquy from Alison Camerata. I mean, with all due respect. I mean, I'm sure she's an expert in geopolitics and border control. But so her point is like, well, we see it. There's literally no arguing with people who are just this either purposely brain dead. They're just reading or listening. Someone's talking in their ear and they're just repeating. I don't know what it is. Alison Camerata is not a stupid person. She's actually, I've always liked her, but you can't be serious here. So what we're seeing now should be the new normal, Alison? Is that what you're arguing to the American people? This is the new normal because I'm telling you, you take this message across the country that the Democrats want an open border and they want these people to come across. As long as they fill out a piece of paper that says, I want asylum, I'm afraid to go back to my home country, they should be able to stay. They should be able to stay as long as they want. 5 years later, they won't show up at their hearing. Why don't you actually take that to the American people and argue that case? They won't. They won't argue that case because they know that is a loser. A complete loser. By the way, this Brexit thing is a nightmare. Theresa May agreed to this Brexit deal that still gives the EU ridiculous powers over Britain, and at a drop of a hat, they can force Britain to still take some of the migration policies. We'll get into that later on with Nigel Farage. He's going to join us. Darrell Issa is going to stop by, and he's part of the lame duck Congress. He's retiring. And, you know, basically all of California is run by liberal Democrats now. Why anyone would want to live in that state, given what's happening to the state now, is beyond me. Starting a business in California, I don't. You have a chance to go to like Utah or Wyoming or Texas, even Arizona. Even in Arizona's going to become the next California if they don't watch out. But still, compared to California, you're going to go to California? Oh, by the way, I love how NBC shows the one picture of a small child with an American flag. And the image is supposed to make you all feel guilty. The image of a child holding an American flag is supposed to make you all feel like you have to have the open borders. Every single one of these politicians and pundits who argued that this was not a crisis should go into a different line of work. When a month ago they were saying Trump was making this out to be an issue just for politics, they're 900 miles away. They're not here. Like 5 seconds after the last race was called, they were, at Tijuana. That was not a crisis. It's working. It's working, Alison Camerata said. It's working. This is all working as it should. This is all good. Yeah, they rushed the border. Oh, yeah, they rush, but then they're repelled. What happens when they're 20,000, Allison? Is that working even better then? What's the alternative? How many of you believe that Donald Trump is right to shut this border down? I'll tell you, Mexico won't be able to sustain it for very long because they depend on the trade more than we do. They need their goods coming up here to keep their economy going. But you cannot have this. Can't have it. I'd shut the whole thing down. I'd shut it down until New Year. Okay, we'll give you to the New Year to figure this out. These people are not going to be coming into the country, period. They created a crisis, and all the organizations who fomented this are going to be investigated for their ties to foreign governments and their ties to individuals on the ground in Central America and even South America who want America to be overrun by thousands of people at one time. This needs a full-scale Justice Department investigation, and you can't do it with an acting attorney general, God bless him. You need a attorney general in there who has the president's full confidence, and you need a Homeland Security secretary who does more than go down at the border and wear a pair of Ray-Bans, which is what Kirstjen Nielsen did. And again, with all due respect to Kirstjen Nielsen, I'm sure she's a lovely person. But you need a strong, forthright person to explain why this is not working, why this is not sustainable, to put the pressure on Congress starting today to pass legislation. Fund the wall, turn around this asylum loophole, get this thing fixed. Now, we got 15 days. That's all they have? 15 days of a legislative session. We're going to take a break. 855-40-LAURA. Chris Cabrera is going to join us, Darrell Issa, Nigel Farage, your calls. Is Trump right to shut this border down? And do you have any faith in these Republicans in the next 15 days to do anything about this crisis? 855-40-LAURA. Satellite groups like Pueblos Sin Fronteras and other groups like it. Oh, look at all these people. Just shows you we need 2 million amnesties. Why not 5 million? Well, remember what the president offered in January to the Democrats going into February of this year. Remember what he offered them?
I think we could really do something having to do with DACA. And what really happened with DACA, we could have done some pretty good work on DACA, but a judge ruled that DACA was okay.